Monday, May 13th, 2019. We will start the regular scheduled board meeting for the Othello School District Board of Directors with the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome all of our guests tonight. Thank you for coming. And I will accept the approval of the agenda, or a motion, anyway.
I'll make that motion.
Been a motion by Director Johnson to approve.
Second.
Second by Director Garza. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. I have a request of the board. It's not to change the agenda, but there are a couple supporting documents that will help with a couple of our items. One of them is in the Superintendent Contract discussion one. Thalia has put everything together in an Excel spreadsheet kind of as a summary, so it might be a little easier for us to go through it. And the other one is, I originally thought we would just kind of start from scratch with GP 14.1.2, and then I decided to kind of just do a sample one that we could have a start point for that, and then so the board can kind of just start making some changes. So if the board's okay with putting those in as supporting documents for those two agenda items.
So you're saying they're not in here now, you're just asking if you can add them?
The agenda's there, it's just a supporting document for those.
Okay, because I'm like, where are those at?
Yeah, no, I'm
Got
asking
it.
for permission to,
Okay.
that wasn't in there by last night.
Yes, that would be nice to have the spreadsheet and the,
Okay, looks like there's a general consensus. So, Thalia will put that in there and we can refresh. Ready? Okay, you should be able to refresh now, board. Okay. Item B1, public comment. There is no request for public comment tonight. But I did want to mention, this is usually the time when we talk about staff or student achievements. And I just received the email today, and probably everyone received the email. But I just want to mention that OHS Marching Band got 3rd place in all divisions at the Wenatchee Apple Blossom Festival Parade. It's apparently the most competitive parade or competition for them for the year, so they were excited about that. 2nd place in 2A, 3rd place overall in all divisions.
they were also, it didn't say it on the email, but it did, they were invited to a parade in Canada.
Wow.
I
And
think that we might hear about that in student reports.
Okay.
Of course you're going to hear about it in student reports.
Well, did I steal your thunder? I apologize.
Maybe, but it's
All right, I'm not going to say anything more about
Whatever.
it then. Okay, we move on to item B2, board member discussions. First is the legislative report by Director Stevenson. Almost called you doctor. You're a doctor now.
Whoa, that's a big promotion. Okay, so today I actually wanted to do a report on the federal changes. So there have been a lot of changes that they have updated recently, and the state did end their legislative session on time, which I don't know the last time they actually did that. That's not a normal thing anymore. But they call it, from federal, they call it IDEA. Individuals with Disabilities Education is what stands for IDEA. They're increasing funding by more than $1 billion for that. all kinds of different special education and other kinds of things. Title I grants is getting also a $1 billion B as in boy. $1 billion increase through House Appropriations Committee. Title II funding increased by $500 million. There is also English language acquisition grants will be increased by $242.6 million to a total of $980 million. Social and emotional learning for whole child approaches. There is big initiatives and changes for that. Lots of specific dollar amounts for different projects and different funding things that way. And then here was some information that they did there was a study from the U.S. Department of Education National Center for Education Statistics. They studied Title I Part A grant program. So these were some really interesting findings, and I've asked the district to come up with their numbers as well for this. The average Title I final allocation per formula eligible child in the United States was $1,227 in the fiscal year 2015, but ranged from $984 in Idaho to $2,590 in Vermont per child. That's a difference of over $1,600. The locales with the highest Title I final allocations per formula eligible child were the most densely and least densely populated areas. Large cities averaged 1,466, and remote rural areas, I'm not sure if we qualify for remote and rural together, 1,313. Districts in fringe rural areas and fringe towns and small suburban areas were close to 1,100 each, and they had the lowest Title I final allocations per formula eligible child. Districts in the highest poverty quarter, or the poorest districts, had the highest Title I final allocation per child, 1,381, and districts in the lowest poverty quarter, the least poor districts, had the least, which is only a difference of like $350. Districts with a 5 to 17-year-old population of less than $300, so the smallest districts had the highest Title I per child, compared with districts with a population of 25,000 or more. The largest ones had the second highest. So really interesting things. That made me very curious to know what our numbers were. I didn't ask for the 2015 numbers. I just asked for our last year's numbers. Were you able to come up with that? You'll need to use a mic. Sorry, so everyone can hear you.
Yeah, so I pulled together some information because Title I has a very interesting formula. Mostly it's based on poverty, as you learned in your session. So I believe, I'm reading the most updated preliminary 1920 allocation spreadsheet. I believe we are at $731, almost 32 per student. And it's not per local student. There's formulas that calculate what they're called formula students. And so we're allocated funds based on formula students. And so I have slides with additional information if you guys want to read the details. But basically it's based on poverty, and poverty relative to the state, poverty relative to our area, and it's actually 2 years old.
Okay.
So it's a look back basically on the census
this
data.
data that I read was 2015 anyways, so it's good that that's at least closer to this. So you're saying more like 731?
Yeah, it's almost 732 if I'm
Okay,
reading this correctly. There's a lot of information on it, but
gotcha.
I believe that's roughly what it boils down to.
Because that's on average about $500 less per child
Then the
than
federal.
the national average.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know that everything is, relative, but very interesting. Just reading those things, I thought, what does that compare to us? You know, what does
Mhm.
that mean for us?
Yeah.
So, new updated changes and stuff, a couple of new grants. And this all comes from, it's called NSBA, the National School Board Association is where this information specifically is coming from, this data, so.
Okay. Thank you, Jen. The next item is the facilities discussion. I'm going to need some help on this. I'm assuming this was put in, Thalia, based on our board retreat request. But, board, help me specifically remember there was some specific discussion you want to have about facilities in this meeting. Can you help me remember what that was?
I think it was just that we wanted to discuss facilities at every meeting now, just
Okay.
those updates.
That was my memory of it, but I just wanted to make sure. So it was always going to be something that we discussed, whether it was specific details, new information we had learned. So I guess I would just start with is there anything that we want to discuss, maybe that has been added from the retreat?
I noticed that we've got an executive session which pertains to property and lease, so I think that's where our next discussion would possibly be. I
Right.
don't know of anything else new except for what could be potentially on that one.
Okay. And maybe just reiterating that really what the board is looking at right now as a potential is looking at what do we have in our reserves to potentially use some money that we have in our, I guess, the best savings, if you will. Possible transfer to capital projects on that, which I think we need to also continue that discussion on what would be the correct amount to not put us in a bad spot with our regular budget, obviously. Then potentially look at a capital levy to start out with some smaller projects before asking the community for a bond down the road, but having a big plan for that project over several years is what we've discussed. And so now right now we're just kind of working out some of the details, and so as they come up, we'll just keep on bringing up more discussions each meeting as far as facilities. I feel like we've come a long way, but there's a ways to go before I feel comfortable really starting to talk to the community about a plan. Does the rest of the board feel the same way? Okay.
Yep.
All right, so the next item is just a little bit of a continued discussion about the superintendent contract extension that comes up for vote at the end of June. Just trying to make sure we're ahead of the game on this and we're having this discussion.
So I want to make sure I fully understand. His contract was for 3 years that we signed last year. So
we
it's
have
a
the
3-year
ability-
contract, so why are we extending if it's a 3-year contract?
So it's 3 years from last year, and every year we have the ability to extend it another year. And it's in the contract where if we decide to extend it, there's a signing bonus in there. In the past, the board's, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong with this, I think the board's philosophy was if Dr. Hurst ends up not getting extended for a third year, he would be one of the lowest paid superintendents of this group of schools that we looked at. And we looked at these school districts because they had some of the things that our ends speak to, which is high graduation rates, those kind of things. So we wanted to districts that are doing well with student achievement.
But we're similar to ours, not just high graduation,
Similar
similar in
in-
size and similar in demographics and low income and all
yes.
those things.
So yes, low income and demographic was part of it. So yes, there were several areas. If we decided not to extend, Dr. Hurst would be one of the lowest paid. But he also has the opportunity, if he hits bonuses, to be one of the higher paid. I don't know that it would be the highest paid, but one of the higher paid if all the bonuses that are totally tied into ends were met. So that's been the philosophy of the board in the past. Obviously, this board might have a different philosophy on it, but so that's why it's up in this one. We've gotten 8 out of 10, I think, that were requested out of 9. Okay, so 8 of 9 have come in now. There's a couple more than what we had for the board retreat. So I just wanted to make the board aware of that, and then there's a summary of the base salaries and additional pay. So we can have discussion about that if we want tonight, but I just wanted to start that ball rolling as well.
This is great to have it in spreadsheet form, thank you. So we're discussing this at an executive session in the future? What,
No, this
what's the next
specific-
plan?
This specific part of the contract actually is appropriate to have these discussions out in public, so, and I think it's good because then we're transparent about our rationale for any salaries, for any bonuses, and, so executive session is appropriate more for, evaluative, if we're doing any evaluation type of, and even that we keep to a minimum because the superintendent evaluation happens at every meeting in public, so, if there's complaints, well, then we keep that in executive session. Certain things, we might have an initial discussion, but we want to then have a bigger discussion in public with most all items when it comes to superintendent contract. Any other board members have any comments at all about the information we have now? Tyson, do you have any issues with your computer?
No,
Are
we're good now.
You're good, okay. If not,
So we have to make a decision by what meeting if we're extended?
that's
Extending.
the last meeting in June.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Second
going back
meeting,
to Jen's question, the yearly continuation of the contract, that bonus associated, that is associated with the ends? Or is that just simply we're deciding to continue his contract? And it's kind of a yearly signing bonus? Is that
So
the way to
I have
look
a
at it?
copy of the contract. It's in board docs in the past.
Right.
If the board would like, we could probably see if Talia could put that into this. So we have
Tyson,
it
if you
more
look at the
easily
last,
accessible.
if you look at the very last line, which is Othello's,
Mhm.
there's,
It gives a summary of it.
right,
Right.
But you can see the actual contract as well. That's all.
a dollar
for the
amount for,
public.
like the bonus, the yearly bonus, and
Right.
then potential for, if he reaches each of the three ends.
Right.
Another.
There's the $25,000
Can you
Bonus.
bring that up so that it makes sense what we're even
bonus to
saying
re-sign it.
visually to others?
7,000 for each ends if he needs each ends.
And the way it was worded last year was that the agreement is effective July 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2021, and it replaced the previous contract from July 1st, 2017. So every year you would do that. You would replace the contract with a one-year extension to it if the board chose. If the board chose not to extend the contract, then there would be that bonus or essential sinus bonus or extension bonus, whatever you want to call it, would not be there. So it would just be base salary. Still the options to meet the ends bonuses. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say if the superintendent is showing that we're meeting the bonuses for the ends, their job is probably safe. Not necessarily, I guess, but probably safe, you know. So we're trying to keep it based on performance by doing that.
Okay.
If you'd like, I'm going to read the exact verbiage and would the board like that document uploaded into the public section of?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I
this-
know it's public in past, sometimes it's just nice to pull it all
But-
current, so it's all in the
If
same
there's many
spot.
places we can find it, it's
But
easier.
For
Yeah.
Tyson's benefit too, being new on the board,
Yeah.
it would be nice so he could have it. for
Yeah, so if we
person.
could update that into tonight's is another one. But I'll read,
And I think that's only like a 5 or 7 page contract instead of 99 like
Yeah,
OEA.
it's short.
Shorter.
Okay, so the way it's worded, Tyson, is for the incentive compensation. The superintendent shall receive $7,000 should the board find the superintendent has reasonably interpreted the provisions of the ends one policy and the district is making reasonable progress toward achieving the desired results called for in the relevant policy. That verbiage is taken right from the monitoring response document.
Mhm.
So if we, as a board, if the majority chooses that that is what we've done, then that is how the superintendent qualifies for that bonus.
Right.
There are 4 choices, but there's only one choice that will allow the superintendent to get the incentive. So, and that will come up, I'll explain that a little bit more when we get the monitoring reports tonight for ends 2 and 3. Okay, so if there's no other questions or clarification on that, we can move on. If we still want to talk about it, we can. All right, getting some head shakes.
Who's the one we're waiting on? Which district?
Oh,
East Valley.
that contract, of course, will come up again in June, so it'll just be in several different board meetings. It'll be easy for the public to find in several places if they do a search
And us
for
too.
superintendent contract. Okay. So we're going to move on then to item B3, student representative reports.
Ooh, gotta be a superintendent for the day.
Everyone's getting an upgrade today.
We had 2 motivational speakers on May 10th, Mr. Guillermo Mota, which is Carla, our drug counselor's brother. He works at KNDU, and he actually did the story on Oscar, which hopefully y'all got to see that. But so he came as a guest speaker and kind of just told us his story about moving from yeah, that one. And Mr. Levon Coleman from the Green Bay Packers he's a running back on the Green Bay Packers. He came to speak to us. He is currently free from the NFL. They both did an amazing job motivating our students to stay in school and reach further goals. So it was really cool to get to have an NFL player get to come and talk to us. So that was exciting. We've finished all of our state testing, and we're looking forward to seeing our growth. The 3rd round of STAR tests is also completed for Desert Oasis, and Tovar will be sharing some of our students' growth. We are super proud of our growth. We did grow a lot this test. On May 7th, DOHS hosted our school board. We're glad that many of our parents were able to attend, and as well as our student body, we felt that the visit went well. We had a Cinco de Mayo potluck celebration during the last hour of school. After school that day, our students also organized a barbecue for all students. Some parents were even there. It was a fun event. DOHS staff is working with Tovar to revamp our instructional program for next year. More to come on this at a later time. Tovar will be sharing some information on these changes. Upcoming events, May 20th, Desert Oasis and OHS grad walks, where they go to the elementary schools and the middle school, I think, and walk around. May 21st, Science State Assessment. May 29th, DOHS graduation dinner for students and parents. The board is invited. May 30th, PBL project presentation in Ms. Camacho's class at 9:55 a.m. June 4th is graduation at 6 p.m. MMS Commons area. And then we also have our senior presentations tomorrow, so that's exciting. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, well, graduation is just around the corner, and seniors are very, very excited. They just received their letters that they wrote to themselves in 8th grade today, and they're getting ready for their grad walk as well. So Isabel and I have been working on coordinating Project Bridges, and so far, well, officially, it will take place on Thursday, June 6th at 5:30 in the OHS main gym. So that has been reserved. It's going to be from 5:30 to 7:30, including the science fair format. So we're going to be working on buffing out the details, I believe. Did you already send the email? Okay. The email's all drafted and ready to send to the principals so they can choose the STEM project or the STEM project they would like to exhibit.
I'm sorry, you said the 6th at what time?
5:30. The Thursday.
So I can stick her in, thank you.
How long do you expect that to be?
5:30, 7:30, about. Yeah, we have. I don't know if it's going to take that long, but as of right now, that is the thing.
And you said at McFarland?
No.
OHS.
OHS main gym.
Okay.
So we also have the Science SBA. We have juniors with us as well, and this week is AP testing. So AP Spanish, Calculus, and English, all of that is happening. And APES happened last week, I believe. All that's happening, so kids are super stressed. Rob kind of stole my thunder, but the OHS band, the marching band, they did place third overall. They were 10 points away from first place at the most competitive parade we've ever been to, and this is our first time going. So that is super insane. And he said again about the Canada trip that we are all like ecstatic for, and we really, really, really would like that to happen. But we don't know if it is final yet. But that would be absolutely amazing. So we can be an internationally known award-winning band. So that's insane. We're all super happy about that. Yeah, that's all I have for my report. Anybody have any questions?
To kind of add on the project bridges, I think we're going to set up like tables so they can have their project on the tables. So it's basically going to be like a science fair theme, but with STEM projects. So I think Desert Oasis is probably going to do like our little libraries. I always want to call them birdhouses, but I know that they aren't. It's just like what comes to my head. Our little libraries project, so just to kind of give them an idea, we'll probably put that in there in the email. So.
And we're also saying that we would prefer at most 3 from, did we say at
Yeah,
least
we were
3
thinking
or
like 3 different projects because
From
I'm sure they
each.
did more than just one project that year.
From schools, from each
Yes.
school is what you're
Yeah.
yeah, so we can kind of fill the room a little
Yeah,
bit.
so we can kind of get different age groups as well, so it's not just the older kids. So hopefully it works out, you know.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Any other questions for the board, for the student reps? Okay. We'll move on to item C1, required approvals.
I'll make a motion to approve the required approvals.
There's been a motion by Director Garza to approve. Anything else, or a question?
Yeah. So we kind of wanted to have like cookies and maybe some water bottles. Do we have a budget or how did
at
what does that
Project
come under?
Bridges.
For Project Bridges, yeah. How does that work?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what's.
I can let you know right after this. We can touch bases with Jeanette.
Okay.
To let you know. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Also, I'll just do it like this instead of, Isabel and I were conferring before and asking also the date of her last meeting as a student rep. So I was thinking the next one in May, because that's the one we'll be picking our next student rep, but I didn't actually know the answer.
Well, technically, our first meeting in June, you're no longer a student, right? You've graduated.
Well, we graduate June 4th, so technically I would be, but
Well, when's our first meeting in June? Second Monday of the month, so it would be after the 4th.
yeah, so
So
May 28th.
I would say, yes, I think that's typically been the last meeting that you come to, yeah. One more, that's it. Okay. So there's a motion on the table for approval of the required approvals.
I'll second the motion.
Mm-hmm.
Been a second by Director Johnson. Any discussion?
Yes, please. Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's see, I gotta click on the right button. I wanted to go into the May 7th special board meeting minutes. I had some questions. This was our retreat meeting.
May
retreat.
4th.
No.
May 7th was a Desert Oasis visit.
Oh, you're right,
That one.
sorry. Wrong meeting. Let's see. Okay, on C2, it says that 2 OSD board members will visit 1 local business each. I think that should read business or community group, because it's not just businesses that are on our linkage list. Does everyone else agree with that wording?
Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then D1. So the very last paragraph or sentence, we wanted to do twice a year staff and administration surveys. of the superintendent, but it says the board decided to use the 4 lowest scored questions for the mid-year evaluation. This was a really long meeting, and sometimes I'm not sure I remember everything. Did we decide that? We did?
So,
Okay.
I don't,
I'm getting a yes and
Jen
like
asked me about that, and I didn't
a
remember the
slight
specifics
nod.
either. So specifically, so that we are all aware, what was the decision
I think it
on
was,
that?
rather than doing the entire survey again, we would concentrate and make it shorter, so more, trying to entice more
Okay,
participation.
I misunderstood what that was saying. So, what it was saying was on the mid-year survey, we would use the 4 lowest survey scores from the previous survey.
Right.
Okay, so
Okay.
if we could word that different, then now I remember that discussion. I think I
Do you remember
misunderstood
that
when I read it.
I don't, but there was a lot of chocolate that had to take place during that meeting for me. Okay, great.
So that, yeah, because that's not an evaluation, it's just, it's a survey, and we're just getting responses. So the board decided to use the 4 lowest scored questions
From the
from the
previous?
previous survey when determining the questions for the mid-year superintendent survey. Maybe is a better way to word that.
Now, we
Okay.
did take audio of this meeting, and I checked to see if it had been uploaded yet, and so I just asked that question. Do you want to answer that question? So that it's, if it's been uploaded and where and details?
Okay, so the mic, or the little audio microphone that we used, it doesn't have an adapter to adapt to a computer to extract the files. So we have to re-record the whole audio onto a computer to be able to combine all of the audio pieces, and then we will be uploading it. I have it, IT has it currently, and Ben Schuler let me know that he will have it to us no later than Friday, and it will be uploaded.
Can we look into purchasing a device that would be easily transferable
Mhm.
in the future?
Yes.
And then where will it be uploaded? Like into board docs, into?
Yes, so on Board Docs, if you go to the meetings, it has print the agenda, meeting minutes, and then video. So if you click on video, that's where we typically put all of our YouTube videos, and that's where I would be putting the audio as well.
So it's
I'm
just a
just
black
searching
screen,
YouTube.
but you get to listen to, but you can listen to the audio part of it. That's how we've done it in the past.
Okay, all right, just to have that information out there. And then the last question was on D4. Oh, it says the board reviewed the attached superintendent contracts. There weren't, I don't think that we had any yet.
We
There
did-
was some.
Yeah, we just had a few at that point that were sent to us.
I must have
And then
been
we
out of it
deferred
It
for
was
that
a
meeting.
chocolate low at the time, I'm pretty sure.
When you're there for 8 hours, I can't remember all the little details, and I'm a little detail person, so. All of
Okay.
the little details person, I should say. Okay, those were
Well, and
my
obviously,
specifics.
the audio would be much more detailed. If anyone wants to hear the specific conversation, they'll be able to listen to that.
Apparently, I'll need to have lots of
Friday.
chocolate and listen to it myself again.
What's nice on this is that Talia put in the times when the discussions happen, so if someone wants to forward to
Yes.
that time,
Perfect.
there'll have to be some math, but
Okay.
they can get it done. All right. Any
Perfect.
questions? Okay, any other discussion regarding the motion that's on the table? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. There are no superintendent informational items, so we'll move on to item C3, Desert Oasis High School Annual Report. Principal Tovar. We're on the edge of our seats. What's that? Yeah, come on up. Yes, please.
You have to turn it on.
Push the button on the bottom.
Usually for an extended period of time.
All right, so good evening. Just to start off with, I'm also going to be talking about my bonus, but that'll come later. I'm going to get to my presentation first, so I'm going to stand on this side, and I apologize. I know, in all honesty, I want to welcome my staff that's here, Mrs. G, Ms. Galan, Mrs. Reno, and one of my students, Julian Flores, obviously, Isabel kind of lives here, so she's a part of what you guys do all the time. So I'm Josh Tovar. I'm the principal at Desert Oasis High School. This is my second year there. This is my 15th or 16th year in the district. I've been an administrator for, I think, 9 years now or 10. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to give you guys the best picture I can in regards to what our school looks like. And this is mostly for the benefit of the public, obviously, who may or may not know a lot about Desert Oasis High School. So first of all, our vision, please pay close attention to the yellow words. I'm trying to figure out how this works. Okay, so DOHS empowers students with the opportunity to find their own pathway to success through diverse learning opportunities. Obviously, we believe every single student is a different world, and they have to find their own way to be successful in life. That's our vision, our mission. We live this, ladies and gentlemen. We foster growth through relationships, trust, and compassion for everyday students every single day. Sometimes we go to a fault. Sometimes we enable students as well. But next slide. I can't click it, can I, Talia? Okay. All right, so our current program, I want to give you guys kind of a background on what we currently offer. We have our daytime program. This is for any student that's credit deficient that decides to come to our school or that is sent to us from Othello High School. We have some students that are not credit deficient and they actually just chose to come to Desert Oasis High School, so we don't turn our back to any of these students. We also have an evening school that operates from 5 to 8 p.m. Mr. Swan's our night school teacher, and this is for students who cannot make it to regular day school. They also have proven that they can't pass 5 out of 7 classes during the regular day. That's our expectation, that every student takes 7 classes and they must pass 5 out of 7. And if not, they go for a semester to night school. And then our hope is that they're able to earn 1.5 credits in order to get back in the daytime program. Some of our students are not making it back in a daytime program, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that later. We also have SEEPS. SEEPS is combined with our night school program. SEEPS is our a program for any student that's long-term or short-term suspended, short-term being more 4 days or more out-of-school suspension. So we currently have about 5 or 6 middle school students there and 1 6th grade student there at this time. Okay, so relevant to INS Policy 1, academic competency, these are just some of the main data points that we collect. Obviously, we're very interested in our ELA and math SBA assessment. We also very interested in our ALPA scores, that's a language acquisition assessment. STAR 360, we administer it 3 times a year in reading and math. And attendance and community truancy board, these are very important data points for us because our students struggle with attendance, and come to find out, that's what all alternative learning centers are struggling with in the Columbia Basin. And then we look at graduation rates because that's what we're there for. All right, so I got 2 different goals here, and I'm going to talk about our overall data goal here for ELA. Our overall, I think, school-wide district goal is that we would like to get our kids to a 57%. It's tough at our school, but we're not making any excuses, and we're trying to push as hard as we can. But we also have a ground level goal where we want to we set an attainable goal for our students, and this year our goal is to increase 10%. So we would like to get our students from a 24 to a 34% this year, and we're pretty confident that we're pretty close to being there. When we look at our data, we don't just pull sophomore data from OSPI. We look at every single student that took the assessment for us in our school, because every single student matters to us. The area of math, this is our district-wide goal. Again, we would love for our students to get to a 55% passing rate. Unfortunately, we've struggled in this area. We would like to increase from the 2% that we were at last year to 12%. Unfortunately, the preliminary data that they'll be sharing with you guys tonight doesn't look good for us. We've had 1 student so far that's managed to be successful on this assessment. It's a tough assessment, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about it and not making any excuses, just bringing some clarification to this. Current reality for ELA in the area of state assessment for our students. If you look at the past, we've had a lot of red, a few glimpses of yellow, and then again last year we were at the 23%. This was in 17-18. Prior to that, I believe the data was even lower than that. So last year when we came on board, we said, hey, let's try to let's make a 10% growth. We actually made 11% growth last year, so we were really, really proud of that. But when you're starting really low, even 10, 11, 12% doesn't seem like much. In the area of math, as you can see, very minimal green. We had 1 person pass this assessment last year, so we were at 2% in 2017 and 18. We realize we have a lot of work to do here, and I'm going to be talking about some of the stuff that we're doing. We're not sitting idle. We're actually trying to attack this problem. We're very aware of this problem, but math is a difficult part in our students' lives. So current reality, SBA results, again, I'm only going to share what the preliminary data back from October. We take the state assessment twice at the high school level. Obviously, we do the retakes. So back in October, we've managed to get 9 students to pass this assessment already. For us, that's a big plus. Any student that passes is a big plus. We also had 1 student who managed to pass the state assessment as well in the area of math back in the fall 2018. So when we look at the language acquisition test, the ALPA 21, so prior to us getting there, I don't believe anyone had ever passed the or exited ALPA, the assessment from Desert Oasis High School. Last year, we celebrated the 3 students that actually passed. We were able to, those 3 students were equivalent to 14% of our students exiting program. If you're familiar with the exiting rate of ALPA language acquisition assessment, the state usually projects their numbers in the mid-teens. So 14% is pretty close to what the state expected exiting rate is at. Right now, last year we had 11 students that were on the bubble, and that makes up this entire yellow spot. Next slide, Celia. So if this kind of just is a breakdown by grade levels and how many students were proficient for about 11th grade and sophomores or seniors, sorry. Obviously, as they get older, these students tend to take the test a little bit more serious or are ready to pass the assessment. But one of the reasons why we're pretty excited about the ALPA, the upcoming scores that have not been released yet, is all of the green represents level 4s and level 5s. Well, there's 4 areas. There's reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and a student, in order to be proficient, has to score a minimum of a 4 across the board. Well, if all this green represents students that have reached parts of this goal, but again, we need to see 4s straight across or 4s and 5s straight across. So we're anticipating this year. We currently have 33, which is about 11 more students, ELL students that we had last year. We're at 33 right now, and we're hoping that we can jump to 28%. It's a lofty goal, but we're confident. We've put in a lot of work through our Monday interventions during advisory time, and we're waiting to see these scores, and we're expecting some great growth based off of what we have seen in the past. Now, we were talking about the STAR. Isabella shared a little bit about the growth, and what I want you guys to notice is this is the reading assessment, and the biggest thing is this is the students that were at grade level in the wintertime. This is students' spring grade level. The biggest thing I want you to see is the freshmen. We have 8 freshmen at our school right now. We had 1 that was at grade level, then we were able to improve to 2 at grade level by spring. We had 2 sophomores, we went to 3. We had 4 juniors, then we went to 5. We had 3 seniors, and we were able to improve that to 4. It's not a humongous growth, but we're pretty excited. And probably the biggest thing that you have to remember is you got to celebrate all types of growth. And one of the things that we've done is we've implemented these STAR celebrations that we didn't think we were going to really kick off. We had 1 so far, and now it seems like everybody wants to know when the next one is. And we owe our students 1 more before the end of the school year. But this is significant. These are any student in our school that made one level of growth in the area of reading. So obviously, this is what our numbers look like. We have 6. We had 26 students in our school. Our school currently has, we're at about 83 students in our school currently. So in the area of math, as you can see, same type of data at the grade level at the beginning of the year, then compared to the spring. We had 0 freshmen. We currently, the last time we took this assessment, we had 2 kids at grade level, sophomores 4 down to 3 down up to 12. This is a pretty big jump for us. In this senior class, 1 out of 17, we had 8 out of 27. The reason why the numbers change is because of who actually is there to take the assessment. And the one thing I told you earlier is our students struggle with attendance. Sometimes we have to leave our testing window open for like 5 days because we have to chase these kids down until they show up, and sometimes they don't show up within that testing window period, so we're not able to test them. Again, this last column is we had 18 students in our school that were able to grow by at least 1 grade level. So again, why do we look at the math? Because it's a little bit more accurate for our students. It's 3 times a year, and compared to the SBA, some of our kids have a test phobia, and the moment you throw an assessment at them, they shut down, and they'll be the first ones that let you know about it too, that they don't like assessments. But like I said, we've gotten them interested in the STAR assessment, and we'll take it, and we're going to try to ride that as long as we can for our students so we can provide you guys with growth. Learning does take place. Unfortunately, one of the things that you were probably asking is, well, if you got some of those kids at grade level, why aren't they passing the state assessment? Well, the reality is the alignment between the STAR assessment and the SBA, it's closely aligned, but again, it's not exact. And also you got to look at the scores, whether they're looking at a 40% passing rate of the SBA versus a much higher passing rate. So that's the other thing we keep in mind. Next slide. Okay, so attendance data at our school, students with fewer than 2 absences. Here's what I'll say about this particular slide is as you get older, our students tend to think it's not as important to come to school. When they're sophomores and juniors, they tend to miss school less, but as they get into that last year, and Isabella's smiling, and she knows why she's smiling, but it's a lot harder for seniors to come to school because they probably know everything, and they're about ready to enter the real life, right? But the reality is this is our reality. Students with fewer than 2 absences in a month, you know, we have some attendance issues in our school. Is student attendance improving at Desert Oasis High School? Well, I can speak to this particular graph that we pull off of OSPI, and I'm not going to be speaking positively. I can tell you that as per the data that's been presented, it has improved. Will it continue to improve? I think we're going to see some significant changes next year, but we have seen some improvement. And also you have to keep in mind, we've also raised the accountability level in the last 2 years for our students, so it's a little bit more difficult for them to leave undetected. So. In regards to community truancy boards, if you don't know what a community truancy board is the students that are they have attendance issues. Before we would take them straight to Ritzville for a BECA petition. Well, we implemented a few years back, I believe it was Mr. Juarez's last year, he started the process into implementing a community truancy board. This is held here at our local police station right next to the courtroom there, and we have a panel kind of like this, and we bring in the parent and or guardian and the student, and we try to find solutions. It's an intervention to try to help these kiddos come to school. Currently, Desert Oasis High School has sent 31 students. That's not counting the students that are coming up on our last one. So we've had 31 students attend, 2 students moved out of district, 2 students dropped out, and we have about 80% of students have showed improvement as evidenced through their attendance. So it does work for us. Does it work for every student? Absolutely not, but it works for a lot of our students. Action steps, academic action steps. These are some of the things that we're doing in the area of reading and English language arts to try to improve. So we started Start 360 professional development at our school. We used Denise Colley, one of our instructional coaches, to kind of help us through this, and we started these interventions on Monday. We figured Monday's a late start. The schedule's already shortened. Let's use it as an intervention time. So what we do is we pull off practice prompts and lessons from Start 360, and we do it in the area of math as well as in the area of language arts, and we administer these interventions. We got a late start this year. Hopefully next year we're a lot more organized. We were learning as we were learning/building as we were going through this with our teachers. So we've also developed SBA learning progressions. Our English language arts teacher puts in a ton of time on his own during the summer to kind of make sure that his instruction is aligned to not the test, but the standards that the assessment is measuring. We've redesigned lessons to focus on areas of greatest needs as evidence on what the STAR data shows us. We've realigned our rubric in argumentative writing, and not only is our ELA teacher using it, but it's always our social studies teacher. He's using social studies concepts, obviously, but he's using argumentative writing rubrics that are going to be used in the ELA assessment as well. And like I said, we're hoping that proves to be successful for us as per the data that we're going to see. Unpacking of ELA standards by teacher, increased focus on vocabulary. We use Quizlet and vocabulary.com in both ELA and social studies. We do a lot of cross-curriculum instruction because our teachers want to help each other, and because of the size of our school, it's a lot easier to get like the math department, because it consists of one teacher, to do kind of what the science department wants. And again, it works marvelous. It's kind of like double dosing or triple dosing depending on the content area. Academic action steps related to our math game plan, very similar. We started also the same thing, math interventions through Start 360. We also started math after-school interventions for both ELA. 2 days a week is ELA, 2 days a week is math. Lately, it's kind of, since the assessment's over, it's kind of turned into more of a hangout/homework club, but our real focus was trying to help those students with just some last-minute strategies and some help of what they were going to see on these assessments. Agile Minds is a scripted curriculum that we use. It's a 2-period. I'm sure you've heard about it in the area of math for Algebra 1. It's 2 periods. Ms. Camacho is our math teacher. She's She's dynamite. She does a great job. But again, when our students come in at a second or third or fourth grade level and she builds them and she's able to grow them by 2 or 3 grade levels, we get close to being at the high school level, but it's still not enough to pass a math state assessment that's measuring students' comprehension at like a sophomore or junior level. So that's our struggle. But we're definitely growing kids, as evidenced in their STAR assessment. Cross-curriculum instruction, again, by all teachers, and even in the area of math. So we do that across everything. One of the after-school, the way we kind of developed who these kids would be for our after-school program, we looked at the students that were the closest to passing. We call them bubble students, and those were kind of our focus groups. Those kids had a personal invitation to attend the after-school tutoring clubs. So. Graduation and advancements, we focus on transcripts. We review exactly what students need. We try to put them in classes that are going to help them move through towards graduation as quickly as possible. The contracts, this is something that we live and die by. We set up contracts for students individually, depending on what their need is, whether it's academic, whether it's attendance or behavioral, and we revisit, we redo these contracts, we sign them with their parents. Their teachers are aware of them. Again, why do we do this? Trying to hold students accountable. Every student in our building has a different struggle. They all have concerns, and this is reality for them. We focus on college and career readiness. High school equivalents or high school presentations for seniors are going to happen tomorrow, and this is all part of the High School and Beyond plan. And everyone's invited to attend, but there's some specific individuals that will be there to watch students like Isabella present their senior presentation. So we're looking forward to that. I know the high school's been doing that as well. That's always a great time of the year. Collaborating with Mr. Foster. He's our ESSA representative from OSPI. He's been a big help in regards to the direction that our school's thinking about going. We've been researching the difference between pros and cons of seeking ALE status. We thought ALE was a title of a school, and it's not. It's actually just the program that you offer. Any school in the district and any school in the state can offer ALE program. That's something that we're going to start doing because everybody thinks Desert Oasis High School is an alternative school anyways, so we might as well start offering some ALE program that's going to help our students be successful. We are not an alternative school, but we're going to be offering an alternative program next year as well. Implementation and ongoing of professional development for PBL and STEAM experiences. We are not experts. We're learning just like the district is, but my teachers are all in, and we'll be the first ones to jump into a lava pit if we know it's for the best benefit of our students. Unfortunately, sometimes we get burned, and Little Libraries is a prime example of that, where we just jumped in, all in. We went school-wide, and there was a lot of pros and cons to this, and we found that out after we received some project-based learning gold standard rubrics and some feedback from the district. So again, my teachers are not afraid to jump in and try something new. Again, if it benefits our students, we're all in. And these guys will be the first ones to tell you that there was pros and cons to that activity. These are some visuals. This is what they started off with. We want to, just a little plug for Builders First Source, who donated a lot of this. Ace Hardware donated of paint. And then our students who kind of went through the process, we put them into groups. And we went at this kind of blind. And this is kind of a finished product. We have our first rendition put up behind Sackman Law. Mr. Swan and a few of our students went up and put them up. So we're hoping that we can leave one uninstalled so we can bring to Project Bridges, but we have a few other ideas too. But what these are just books that are community. Our students next year specifically is going to be refilling them. We're going to take donations. We're going to place books in here, and they're free. Hopefully people bring them back to one of our 6 locations, and if they decide to keep the book, power to them. These are donated books to us, and we're going to donate to our community of different genres and reading ability levels. So if you drive behind Umpqua Bank, you'll see our first little library up there. This is Go Fly a Kite. This is our project that we're going to be starting here with Ms. Camacho in our geometry and math classes, and hopefully we're able to share some of this in our Project Bridges. And I've told the board that if you see some crazy-looking kids running down the street between Ludokaga and Desert Oasis High School, those are my kids, and it's a kite in the air, and this is what they're trying to do after they go through the research and design project. And again, we'd like to thank our district office for for spotting us the money for project-based learning and being able to fund activities like this for our students, which is they get really into hands-on activities. Now, Desert Oasis graduation trends, I told you I'd be talking about this, and the reality is what percent of our students graduate in 4 years? About 45%. That's why we're on School of Improvement, right? Unfortunately, we have some control over it, but not full control over it. We are receiving students who are credit deficient, as I mentioned earlier, so these kiddos, we need to get them credit as fast as we can. We're going to be making some changes next year to do that. The reality is our kids do not graduate in 4 years. If they did, they'd be at Othello High School, correct? So we are there to help our kids get on track. We do graduate students in 4 years, 45% of them, but not 85%. So this slide here kind of tells you how long does it typically take Desert Oasis High School kids to graduate. Well, as per the data that's been reported, 5 to 6 years. That's how long it takes our students to graduate. If we can get them done in 5 years, that's a plus. 6 years is kind of a rarity. Most of our kids get it done in 4.5 years is where we're averaging right now. Attendance systems, what are we doing to improve attendance? All of the above. Attendance success plans, this is part of ROWI, that's our attendance program that we use in our district. BECA petitions, we use this as a last resort, and I love going to court for 7 kids on spring break. That's just what I love to do, and that's what we did this year. We do attendance contracts, monthly attendance graduation monitoring by myself, our attendance clerk, which happens to be Mrs. Reno, or Priscilla Tovar, our counselor, parent attendance meetings, community truancy boards, assemblies to motivate kids and tell them attendance matters, but the reality is it has to click for a student. No matter how much we tell them, our students need to realize that attendance matters to them. Behavior data, what are we doing? Again, re-engagement plans, early warning signs. This is a spreadsheet that we review probably 2 to 3 times a month in my staff. These are a list of all of our students that are, I guess, indicators show that these kids are going to be the highest likelihood of being unsuccessful academically or with their attendance. We review this all the time, and we'll be reviewing it tomorrow. We have a weekly staff meeting in our building. These are our on-watch kids. This list consists of about 20 kids to 25 kids. It kind of varies throughout the year. Community partnerships, oh man, we're connected with OPD, Adams County Juvenile Court, Integrated Health, WISE counselors. We use all of these individuals, and they're kind of like our house is their house when it comes to collaborating with them. Project-based learning type of approach to discipline. When we discipline students, yes, we suspend, and yes, we correct students, but it's always under a respectful corrective measure versus like punitive measure. So sometimes you'll hear, hey, Tovar didn't do that to that kid. Did you hear what he did? There's a reason why Tovar does what he does. I've been doing this a while to where I know whether suspending a student is going to correct his behavior or is going to worsen his behavior. Sometimes we do the wrong thing. That's part of being an administrator, and the next time we try to make things right for the student. But I'm always going to err on the part of helping a student versus punishing a student. That's just what we're doing. Again, motivational speakers that have been mentioned. We'll bring in Michael Jackson back from the dead if it helps our kids improve their behavior. But the reality is, some of our students, we brought in Levon Coleman, who got cut from Green Bay Packers, and he's a free agent, is what Isabella meant to say, and he's being courted by 14 NFL teams right now. But even then, we had students that still skipped. So you know, it's kind of a culture thing that we're trying to shift in our school. Social-emotional learning, so we can't teach students anything until they're stable in their mind. Our students go through a lot of things that every other student does, and maybe adults do, but some of our kids go through things that no student should ever have to go through, and it's it's not their fault. It's just they're a product of their environment. They grew up in rough homes, and the reality is when we can do any of these types of activities, this is a fun time. These are seniors getting feedback on their resumes for their project or high school and beyond plan. These are some job shadowings. This is the Harbor, which is a character program that we run during advisory on our Mondays. And this right here is the first time ever Julian got to go, is we got to go to We Day. It's a middle school thing, but Mrs. Nuno was a leadership teacher at our school, and our students earned 30 tickets through their service projects. So we got to go, and it was pretty exciting. First time for us ever. These are some of the service projects that they did around the community to earn some of those tickets. My students have been involved in all of these things. They're regulars at the fair, Lions Club, Sand Crane Festival. This year, McManaman Road was covered with snow, so we did the next best thing. They asked us to come and help set up and tear down. My kids showed up on Saturday, and there was a lot of them, and they do it with a smile, and I think that's what surprises a lot of the adults. They're involved with a lot of the senior bingo nights and events, and I know Dr. Hurst has been a part of that too. So there's going to be some future accolades that come across their service that they're going to be voiced in the future. I don't want to speak to any of them yet because it's not made public yet, but they're doing some good things when it comes to service. My kids love to serve. So this right here is a really important slide that there's going to be more to come on this, and this is what I've been kind of thinking about a lot lately, is how do we offer services to meet the needs of every single student that walks in our door. Currently, I said we have 2 different programs. We have a full-day program, and we have our evening program. Well, you notice this pyramid has 4 sections to it, and I know Pete's going to be alluding to some of this in the future as well, but one of the things that we want to do is, and I introduced this to the board, is we're going to try to do a night school program in the daytime, and we're going to offer from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and they're going to kind of merge. And right now we're working with our district administrative team to figure out how we can fund this without using any funds, how we can staff this with the current staff that we have. It's not an easy task, but we're trying. But I know 100% sure that this ALE intervention, Tier 2 is what I call it, is something that's absolutely necessary for our school. Right now we have some students that can't make it in our day program. They refuse to come in our night school program, so what happens? They drop out of school. And that's what we're struggling with right now. So we're trying to capture them through this safety net, and there will be more to come in the future in regards to what my plans are, what our plans are, and what we're going to be working towards. This is what our summer looks like. This is what we're going to be building, and next year you'll hear more about Desert Oasis High School and the programs that it's going to be offering, and hopefully it causes a positive chain reaction in all programs that we currently have, so, and data. So this is one of our pictures of all of our staff, or most of them, because obviously we're always missing some students, but these are our students. Our students are different. Our students, they all look different, they all speak differently, but at the end of the day, they're students, and they love to serve, they love their school, they love their staff. This is what we are super proud of, and we are Desert Oasis High School, and if you guys have any questions of me, I'd love to answer them. I also brought Julian, because he's as authentic as they come, and he can answer any questions that you might have as well. So thank you guys for giving us the time tonight.
Thank you, Principal Tovar. Does the board have any questions or also comments about the visit?
So, since I'm on the Sandhill Crane Festival Committee and Board, there was a back out of a large group that was supposed to come and help and serve, and apparently your name is Tovar. You don't have a Mr. or a first name or anything. Just everyone refers to you as Tovar, including I caught that you yourself do that as well. So I thought that was ironic. The word that they used, she called me in a panic. I have no one to set up. This group backed out. I don't know what to do. And I said, well, today's Wednesday. Call church groups. That's the best thing to do. But you had actually called that afternoon. The word that was used was savior. And I wasn't able to be there during setup and stuff, but everyone was so impressed, and you rescued the setup and takedown. It would have been a disaster without your students. You're right, your students. And definitely, please. And everyone always says, McManaman Road. Anytime anybody refers to for the festival, McManaman Road, that's so big. So, huge things. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say I was thoroughly impressed. From the time we started with the parents and them to tell us how much it changed not only their kids, but it's changing their families too, their lives. And then follow it up with the staff to hear their determination and their goals and how they've created a family atmosphere there along with the kids. And then we had the kids come in, and we had a room full of them, and every one of them was willing to share their story. And they all have stories. As Mike could tell you, the tissues were coming out. And it's very impressive of what your staff is doing with the kids there. And I'm very pleased with what they're doing.
I'll just echo that. I was very impressed. Excellent things from the students, from the staff. I think they're on track. You've got a great vision, and it's gonna change lives. I would agree.
No, that was, Ken did a great job of explaining the day. Rob missed out on a great visit. Josh, for the staff that's here, those that aren't, if you're listening, kudos to every single one of you for what you guys are doing. I see a young lady that's here that at that meeting, there's no tissues here, so I'll try to not need them, but you can't help but get emotional when you're there because you can sense it. I mean, the room actually, the atmosphere, it's palpable that these parents, the stories are real. They're not made up. They're not coached or anything. And to see the passion in these parents and the gratitude that they have for what you guys are doing there. I appreciate your candor and your openness and not shying away from the problems that are there because it is what it is. And you and your staff and your willingness to put in the 12, 14-hour days and willingness to jump into the lava pit if you have to for your kid, you're to be commended for that. You and your staff are. It was a great visit. Ken said, started with the parents, the teachers, the students. You guys have a big task, and you guys are grabbing the bull by the horns and going forward with that, and just keep up the good work. You guys are you've already changed lives, or the program has changed lives, and I have no doubt in my mind that you guys continue to do the same thing. Thank you.
It always bothers me when I miss an opportunity for a good cry, Josh. You know me a little bit. But one thing I just want to state, and I think there's still people who think that Desert Oasis and previously to that, ALPS, was a place where all the kids who had problems with discipline went. And I think it's important to, I think you hit it on the head. Your big issue is just the kids showing up for school. And I know that's a challenge for you, but I know you have kids who do show up every day, and they're there. They couldn't find a way to learn in a different environment, but they're at Desert Oasis, they do. And I know the percentages aren't what you want, but the percentages that do figure it out, I know you guys are changing lives over there, so it does upset me that I missed it, and I'm sorry I missed it, but I'll be there for graduation. I'll be handing out diplomas.
Thank you. Thank you to the whole board. And again, guys, it's a compliment to our students and our staff. They do all the work. So thank you guys for having us.
Okay, so our next item is item D1, monitoring reports from the superintendent and staff, and/or staff, I guess. So I just want to kind of let you know on this, Tyson, and really for the rest of the board too, is we've been getting reports on ELs all year long, and it's a switch when you go to ends. I mean, these are the big ones, right? These are the results. And I want to remind you also, when you do the Survey Monkeys for these, it's different than ELs. It's not just a matter of in compliance and in compliance with these exceptions. There are 4 parts of that, and I'm going to go over it after the report so that we're keenly aware of how we're answering for ends, because it is different on the Survey Monkeys. So typically then, Tyson, we get an oral report on ends rather than just a written report, and so it gives us a chance to answer or ask some questions and get them answered.
Before we go into it, I just had some questions about 1 and 2 on our, what's this? GP 7.1, our calendar. It says ends 1 and 3, but then next Tuesday says 2 and 3.
I believe that's been corrected in our policy review. We modified this policy probably 4 or 5 times throughout the year.
Yeah, right.
And nobody ever caught that was supposed to be 2 and 3. So it's supposed to be 2 and 3 next time, and then 1 we'll get a report on in June.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So it was just an oversight all year long, but I think it's been corrected on
Yes.
the one that we'll be looking at tonight.
Okay. All right. I just
Or
wanted to.
Actually, tonight's probably for next year. Okay. It would have had to be
We're never fixing it.
2 different calendars would have had to go in there, but just so you know, the board knows,
Okay.
it's actually 2 and 3,
Okay.
not 1 and 3.
That makes sense then. All right. Thank you for clarification.
When I ask if he can come and just share the oral presentation.
All right. Good evening. Excited to be here to share the progress of our students and staff and celebrating that progress and growth across the system. I always like to remind folks about the task at hand and the instructional pipeline that's present, and that we try and put it in front of our staff and all of our stakeholders anytime we get the opportunity. This really is about tomorrow's future, what we expect the district to look like. And we've set some ambitious goals, and we monitor those and adjust moving forward. And tonight is about sharing with you some of the things we think we might be able to accelerate, some areas we may realign, but all in the interest of sharing the progress of the system. Additionally, I always like to take an opportunity to remind folks about the instructional vision that was created collaboratively across the district. I also want to reiterate that, again, we've set some aggressive and ambitious goals and targets, and we'll talk about that tonight as it relates to ends 2 and 3. Part of that will be the scorecard that's been developed, and I think this is our first year actually reporting in this type of structure. And this is really about the results matching the expectations and looking for themes in that work. Tonight is also about an opportunity for us to share evidence demonstrating reasonable progress. What are our supporting initiatives or plans and strategies? Something that Principal Tovar shared that struck me was, I heard all the compliments from the board about the work and activities and the commentary from the DOHS visit. But the second to last slide that he showed talked about a total revamp of what's happening there. And I think that's the kind of coherence and continuous quality improvement that we've committed to as a system that is around progress. And so excited to share something very specific around that work and graduation rate tonight. And also just a reminder, and I think he did a good job of articulating it, that success isn't always a straight line, right? There are detours along the way. So we're going to share that progress of our students and staff this evening. Our what, again, is those strategic initiatives and how we get at the work. I'd just like to call out a couple of key phrases in this slide, particularly around coherence, continuous improvement, and knowing what our impact is. Professional learning, there's a lot of stuff in that pipeline of services that we need to build capacity around, and it's important that we take every opportunity to train our folks to give them the skills they need to make the heavy lift. Yeah, I also want to remind folks that this idea about kinder readiness certainly is reflected in ends 2 and 3. You could ask any kindergarten teacher in our system, and I think they would tell you that graduation doesn't start in 9th grade. It really starts much earlier than that. But in ends 2, we talk about graduation and what's happening at DOHS and what's happening at the high school, when really it's a much broader conversation. And I also want to talk about the whole child concept that we heard a little bit about earlier, and this idea about social and emotional support that we'll share with you this evening. Now, the scorecard slide. The numbers that you see there with the asterisk, those are the goals, and then the actual performance is on the right-hand side. You can see in the area of project-based learning, we certainly exceeded the goal in that area. That was focused on providing the professional learning for the high-quality PBL that Principal Tovar alluded to, but that's been a new project for all of our staff, and so we're really excited about the progress there. So when I talk about acceleration, it might be that we ramp up that goal even a little more next year. Much of our success in that area is attributed to the work at the elementary schools. Certainly been where we've had the most consistent implementation of project-based learning. Just over half of our kids have had an experience with a high-quality project. So we're excited about that progress, and we know there's a lot of work to be done at the secondary levels, getting those teachers to understand and build their own skills around how you integrate the content that they like to focus on with other content specialists. But we're very proud of the work around project-based learning. In the area of STEAM, you can see that we're able to exceed that goal there as well. Excellent momentum, K-6. We have additional cohorts for project-based learning coming on this summer. We're going to run project-based learning 201 for our first folks who own much of this data. They'll get a more rigorous level of instruction this summer, and then a second cohort of PBL 101 for some new members of the team. So we're excited about the work that happened in that area. You can also see around graduation, the post-secondary one, I do want to make reference to that. Those continue to be targets. We have a staff member at Othello High School who reaches out through social media, through personal contacts, all those kinds of formal and informal surveys, trying to get that data back on kids. We did not feel comfortable sharing the data tonight as we still have about 75 students that we're attempting to make consistent contact with, so we don't have a number in there for you just yet.
Can you define what exactly you mean by post-secondary education?
Yeah, I actually had an opportunity to review the questionnaire with the staff, and so it has a series of personal questions just like really where are you at in your life? I imagined it if I was having a conversation with a nephew of mine. Hey, what are you up to? Where are you working? Oh, you're going to school. What kind of school are you going to? 2-year, 4-year, those kinds of things. There's some personal questions in there about their own personal circumstances. So it really feels like a sort of intimate one-on-one conversation that you need to have with someone. And we just have, throughout the year, kids don't respond to the survey, or we don't hear from them, or they move out of town. But we want to have a clear picture of all the data. But that's what we ask them. What kind of school are you in? What are you attending? That kind of thing.
So would like a technical school be included, or some kind of training like that is,
absolutely.
I guess, where I was, okay.
Yep. The staff member who collects that data creates a shared Google spreadsheet, and you'll see embedded the name of the institution they're attending, the kind of work they're doing. Those are all embedded in there.
Okay, great.
So I just want to add to the question that a few years ago, we found out about a company, I think they're out of Clarkston, that actually does this work. And I believe we did use them for 1 year. I don't know if we had any kind of contract with them, or if it was a 1-year deal, but just awareness in the future. I know it takes staff resources. It might be something worth looking into. I have a memory that they were based out of Clarkston. They would do that work.
Okay, we'll make note of that. Thank you for the recommendation. The next piece around graduation rate, I would lump these together, and my assessment of the progress is that it's been flat when you look at just the raw numbers, but I'm excited to share with you in just a couple slides. Josh gave you, we called his second to last slide the stick figure version of what you're going to see here a little bit later. It'll provide some more detail about the outstanding progress being made in that area to get more kids to the graduation finish line. The next piece around the finance course, of course, that's been pushed out. The board, or previous board, adopted that as a local graduation requirement, so every kid that graduates from our system will certainly meet that standard here moving forward, and the 100% target is evidence of that. Related to the 60 minutes of daily physical activity, that's collected through the Healthy Youth Survey. We assess 3 bands of our kids. You can see that we are just off our target of 30%. We were right at 23. The state average we discovered was 22%. So hovering right there just above what the state is doing. This is really our first shot at collecting this data, so I think we'll want to engage in a conversation with Dr. Hurston and with the board about if that's an appropriate measure and how we feel about the data that we collected there. In the area of cultural proficiency, again, that one continues to be pushed out just a bit. And then around college and career readiness, the development of the high school and beyond plan. Certainly some excellent work at Othello High School around senior presentations. If any of you were able to participate in that event, I've done it for several years, and this year was particularly impressed by the quality of the work and the coherence of the work by all of the students who had that opportunity. So we're pretty proud, and I think the board should be proud of the product that we're putting out at Othello High School. The next slide provides just a couple of key questions about where are we struggling. Well, Principal Tovar shared with you his OSD graduation rate. And I think until that's 100%, we're going to identify that as an area where we could improve. And what are we doing about that issue, and how are we going to attack it? It's this tiered approach. The Office of School and System Improvement was established through the federal government. Mr. Tovar referred to it as ESSA, E-S-S-A, and Kevin Foster, who's a consultant that's been assigned to the Othello School District. We've developed a partnership with him, and he's a retired superintendent and has particular expertise around alternative learning. So through his leadership, Mr. Tovar, myself, and a couple other members from his school and the district, we had a site visit to a couple of really high-performing alternative schools that are doing really excellent things around graduation. And we did that earlier this year, and we're continuing to press on that work. And so this represents what we believe is a strong push towards addressing that flat graduation rate. What you'll see at the bottom is this foundational tier. That was missing in Principal Tovar's presentation. That represents Othello High School. We are, I guess for lack of a better term, a one high school community. We have one large comprehensive high school with about 1,100 kids. It's a 7-period day. You come there, you earn your credits, and you graduate as an Othello Husky. Beyond that, we've had the DOHS Day program, and you typically got into that day program because you were credit deficient, because you had some issues earning your credits at Othello High School. It could have been related to attendance or behavior or a combination of factors. We're going to continue to roll forward with that day program, and we expect that it would continue to be between 85 and 100 students, whatever the capacity of the facility is. That next tier on the pyramid, it's identified as tier 2 here, is a more personalized program, and this is a self-paced activity. We can stretch our manpower a little bit further. We can work with kids who have a truly identified need that they're going to struggle in a traditional school setting. Even as non-traditional as DOHS might feel, it's still a struggle for many of our students. And in Tovar's data, at least half of them aren't making it to the graduation line in 4 years. So this is a new initiative in response to addressing that concern. The third tier, ALE Evening School, that's something that's been in place for several years to support our students who have been excluded from the general school day. And then the top tier, it's called Open Doors Reengagement, and that's a refined project that we have with our local SkillSource. SkillSource was looking to stay relevant in our community, and they partner with the state and the federal government, and to keep their doors open, they have to have these established community partnerships. So we've engaged in a conversation with them. That work's been led primarily by Amy Paris and Principal Tovar. I've had just a little bit of involvement in it, but that's going to create opportunities for kids who, those kids right now in our community are not graduating. Of that 20%, when you look at the OSD graduation rate, that's sort of one final opportunity for a kid to capture a meaningful diploma and to look for gainful employment. So that's a big move for us. It's really inexpensive and efficient in a way, if we have a strong partnership, to get many more kids to the graduation finish line. So we're really excited about the potential of this tiered approach and the momentum at DOHS behind the work. And we just got OHS on board in the conversation because it's going to have a nice impact there for them as well. So really excited about the progress towards graduation rate. Perhaps not reflected in the scorecard, but certainly reflected in the hard work of the people in the system. You'll be hearing more about this process over the next several months. N2, so again, back to it, those two questions that appeared in the previous slide. I also want to highlight our successes. Very excited about the percentage of students participating in project-based learning and the number of students participated in STEAM learning experiences. Teachers are excited about that work, and it's about having the time and the capacity to fit it into their day. So Jessica Schenk and her team should be recognized for the effort she's putting into providing professional learning in those two areas specifically. Ensuring kindergarten readiness, I think our initiatives around preschool and early literacy, you're not going to see it in the graduation rate this year, but you're certainly going to see it moving forward. And I know our principals and our K-3 folks are going to feel the impact over the next few years, and really exciting work in our system, and I think that should be recognized in N2. And this idea about continuous improvement, again, I go back to your comments from the board to Principal Tovar about the excellent visit at his site, and this looks like a total revamp of his site. But really, it's a much more coherent process, and if you were impressed by what you saw this year, I'm really excited about what's going to happen next year for the kids that attend that school. N3, this one starts with an area around attendance. I left this one blank because I think it's important to call out the numbers here. When you look at them, certainly the aggressiveness and the ambitiousness of the goals, you can see that we're well off the mark, 80% target, and our highest was just under 50, and we have the elementaries who were well off that mark. And I think it's important that we talk about those goals. In the TPEP process, teachers are recognized for the rigor of their goals, but we also want them to be attainable and reasonable and measurable. And this was certainly a very rigorous goal, but I want to share some of the progress that has been made around attendance. If you look at that goal above, the 80%, what was set there by the system was that you could only have 4 absences to meet that goal. That's sort of the ideal state, right? So imagine if you're an elementary student, that's maybe one fever, one family trip, one cold. 4 days is a very rigorous goal.
4 days for the entire school year?
For the entire school year.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
just
what
to
we're
confirm.
looking for.
All right.
Yeah. So those percentages on the right represent, they're represented in the scorecard, but they seem well off the mark. So we wanted to dig a little deeper, and what you note that even if you doubled that to 8 absences, then it climbs up to the mid-60s for the secondary folks, and still around 40% K-6. So 8 absences in a school year. So then we took another lens and we said, well, if we had average daily attendance, if every day 97.5% of our kids were in school, would that be an acceptable measure and a more reasonable goal? And when we calculated it that way through RAWI, which is one of the system improvements we've made, and Principal Tovar referenced it, you can see the numbers 9, 12, 7, 8, and K3. We're in the mid-90s. So I think we want to engage in a conversation with Dr. Hurst and certainly the board after they provide feedback on N2 and 3, on certainly the appropriateness of and the rigor of the goal, but what it will be moving forward, and if this, we believe, demonstrates certainly reasonable progress. Related to the state, you'll see that average daily attendance, or for chronic absenteeism, the state average is right around 83%, and the OSD slightly outperforming the state of Washington. I'm going to take a bit of a risk with the technology and show you an additional slide here on a, no, maybe not. There's student data that populates on this slide, and so I apologize for that. It timed out. I don't want to take the risk of inadvertently displaying student data, student names. But in the live website, what you'll see, 7-12 is a clear downward trend in chronic absenteeism over the last 3 years. So what I'll do is I'll have Thalia take a snip of that and share it with the board, and perhaps we can upload it to this presentation. But I again, don't want to take the risk. But you will see 7-12, a clear downward trend in chronic absenteeism across the district, demonstrating progress. What you'll notice, K6 is a bit of an upward trend, and that's related to a change in the reporting mechanisms that's the state required. Now you report elementary attendance in 4 buckets. So we used to have kids, when the system wasn't clean, you could miss half a day, and that was still counted as attendance. Now if you leave for half a day, the way that we're tracking it and the coherence around the system, that's going to be counted as an absence. So you'll see a slight uptick K6 just based on the adjustments that the state's required. We'll have to take a deeper look and see if that's consistent across the state of Washington. But certainly in our system, a downward trend, and we'll share that slide with the board.
Pete, can you explain how you calculate average daily attendance?
Yeah, it's the number of bodies in the seats every day. So if we have 500 kids at our school and 500 show up, we hit 100% that day. And if we have, a handful gone, we're at 98% for the day, whatever those numbers are. So that's how they calculate it. How many kids were there all day?
So am I to assume then that those low numbers of the current reality, the way it's being figured out, is that maybe, I don't know, December 18th or December 12th of every year there might be 10%? Or I wouldn't, maybe not 10%, but that really throws off then the overall numbers when you're trying to get the averages? Is that why there's certain times of year where a lot of our students leave?
Yeah, and I think that's, when you think about reasonable progress, I certainly think that's the next layer of data analysis. When are the kids gone? Why are they missing? How do we dig a little bit deeper so that 85%, which is outpacing the state, turns into 90, and all of those numbers start to creep up? But the average daily attendance is what our buildings have been focusing on. They've been saying we want this many kids and this many employees here every day. And so I think we can see evidence of the progress in their focus. Now it's about, I think, us as a system getting together and considering. That was our first shot at that scorecard. I think you saw multiple iterations of that scorecard, and there's bound to be some adjustments moving forward. I would hope the board would consider.
Can you also share with us the significance of 4 absences? Because I know this is something that Dr. Hurst brought up even this first year here. I don't know that Tyson's had the opportunity to hear that. I think it's for the community to hear it again would be good. But why was 4 absences chosen as the mark?
Yeah, want me to answer, or Dr. Hurst, would you want to provide your rationale around that?
It's one of the things I shared with the board when I first got here, Tyson, is that when you look at high schools and middle schools across the nation, there is a number that says if a student misses this many days, then it reduces their chances of graduating by this %. And all of the data says 5 days is the number. So we don't want our students to miss any more than 5 days, because once you look at that chart, it says it reduces their chances of graduating on time by about 20-something%. So we want our students to graduate on time, so that means they need to be here in the classroom to be part of the instruction. But we also shared in that chart, it's not just 5 days, because when I first got here, I shared that we have students in excess of 40 days, 41 days. And I said there's also a cut point for that. So whenever you have a student that misses that many days, then their chances of graduating on time is 0. But we have students in our system that actually have 40 days and beyond that they have missed throughout the entire school year. The state of Washington says that whenever you are absent 18 days, it's determined to be chronic absenteeism. So again, 18 days is a state number. We opted to say we don't want our students missing 18 days because it reduces their chances of graduating on time. We don't even want them to miss 9 days, which is why you see the 97.5%, which really means 4.5 days, really. So we say 4 days we want our students to miss. So as Pete was saying, that is a very lofty goal, that every student can miss only 4 days. That's why you see the lower percentage, which may mean the board has to look at that goal and say, okay, what do we do? Is it a little bit too rigorous? Is our first shot at that? Or do we keep the same goal and just continue to march forward? But as Pete said, we are above the state in trying to reduce that chronic absenteeism rate. So we are proud of that. But that's where that magic number comes from, the four days.
All right, the next portion of end 3 relates specifically to bullying referrals and suspensions and expulsions across the system. You'll note that in the elementary schools, we had set a goal of 4, and actually the number this year, year to date, is 9. I don't think that is an unusual response to the 6th grade students transitioning down, and I think it really ties into the next number at the middle school, where we saw a reduction and certainly met our goal, but I think we would have expected a more significant reduction at the middle school. So we feel like there's been really good progress at the elementaries. Continues to be a monitoring and implementation of social and emotional structures that support our kids so they aren't bullying others or feeling like if they are being harassed and intimidated, that they have an adult they can share that concern with. At the high school, able to exceed our goal as well. What I would ask the board to consider is that overall, as a system, we were able to make progress from 70 referrals last year down to 45 as a system. So I think when I think about N3 in totality, excited about the work of the folks focusing on SEL and that whole child perspective, and I think there's some strong recognition for our teachers and our administrators and our students in that area.
Pete, can you define exactly what a bullying referral is?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the elementaries, what you would see is a note to the principal saying, hey, I'm concerned about this behavior. It's repetitive. It's for a real specific characteristic. They're targeting this student. The term bullying, I think, in educational circles and in community circles is thrown around rather quickly. It does have a pretty high threshold, a pretty high bar, and we've provided some training most recently for our administrators to sort of sort through that. One of the things we noted at McFarland is that the teacher level access to mark bullying as a recommendation, that we believe contributed significantly last year to the much larger number present. That was a portion of it. Certainly there were some systemic issues that they're working on at McFarland. But the teachers could actually go in and if the administrator didn't have a follow-up conversation or say, hey, that was a harassment issue, or that was being disrespectful, or that was inappropriate language, it didn't reach the threshold of bullying. And so we use the state's definition around that. But certainly there's some learning around identifying and marking that correctly on the referral that we're working with our administrators around. And at the high school, again, it gets back to, I think Tovar shared it around attendance, but I think there's a level of maturity that comes there and an expectation of how we behave in school and that those kinds of things won't be tolerated. But all of the adults in the system have to be able to identify bullying, have to be able to respond to it and mark it appropriately. And we feel like we've gotten much better at that the last couple of years.
Perfect, thank you.
The next portions are related to suspensions and expulsions. And again, those numbers look pretty flat. Feel like they're have been pretty strong at the elementary level, and that continues to be the focus in the state of Washington. We don't want to put those kids out of school. We want to limit the number of visits to the in-school suspension. And I think that's perhaps one structural change that we would consider at McFarland. Those suspensions are representative of in-school suspensions as well, and they probably have the most access to that resource, and so I think there's some consideration for adjusting the systems, and that number of 17 at the middle school, although it's a bit of an improvement, still some work to be done there around middle school discipline. And that's reflected in the next slide, which talks about areas that we're struggling and what are we doing.
So,
yeah.
sorry, Peter, real quick, just so I'm clear on it. When you're mentioning middle school in here, are you mentioning a building or are you mentioning grade span?
Oh, well, in our system right now, both. I'm mentioning 7, 8, and McFarland.
Okay, so 6th grade is not included in middle school in this
Correct.
slide.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So, follow-up question. Last year's numbers, did that include just McFarland and as a result 6 through 8?
Last year's numbers are 6 through 8.
Okay.
Correct. So what are we doing about that concern around particularly middle school discipline? I think we would highlight the work of the Social-Emotional Learning Research and Study Team. That's certainly been the most active and most the highest level of participation in the community, specifically around the safety initiatives that the board and Dr. Hurst have put out there, asking for some support about school safety in our district. The threat assessment team who's come in and said, hey, typically this kid would have been out for a certain number of days in the old system, but getting this team of mental health professionals together and educators and saying, that's really a pretty mild threat. There's something else we can do for this kid to make his experience more successful. Restorative practices and building our capacity as a system is certainly going to impact those numbers moving forward. And in the pathways to graduation, I think giving kids hope that they can reach the graduation finish line, despite the obstacles that might be in front of them, I think that's a key component to improving our system. Regarding successes, I certainly, again, would reiterate our efforts around chronic absenteeism, particularly the Success 712. RAWI, which Principal Tovar mentioned as an internal mechanism that we use to track and monitor attendance data like we've never been able to do, so that was a worthwhile investment. And then the suspensions and expulsions, certainly the decrease in that area. We're excited about that work and the progress we've made for our students feeling safe and comfortable at school. Lastly, I would say that really the complexity of a systems change like project-based learning is going to impact all of the ends, and that we're working hard to, as you see, get kids more experiences, but also build the capacity of our teachers. We're asking them to do some very difficult work. It's really good work, and it's a matter of us having the time to provide that training and support that they need to be successful. And with that, I would offer, should edit that slide. It should not say end one, and it should not say mid-year report. But we'll still take questions and comments or observations.
I have one quick comment. I just want to say I thought it was really interesting how you talked about how there's mental health professionals that looked at the numbers of the absences, because I have noticed that there is a specific student that they missed a specific class for a specific reason, and after the help from the administration and them understanding and really identifying that reason, it helped this person is now on track to graduate because of the backup from the administration and because the backup from these mental health professionals. So I thought that was super cool that it is working and it is helping.
So I have a philosophical question for Dr. Hurst. So, and I know I ask questions and sometimes people assume I'm making a statement with my question, but this really is just a question. Do you think it's better to graduate on time in 4 years? Or What's more important, graduating on time in 4 years or being ready for the next step in your life?
Being ready for the next step in your life, for sure.
It was brought up at a WASDA conference several years ago, and it was the first time I really thought about it, but I think that it was intentional when the board wrote N2 without any 4-year, 5-year number
Yeah.
put in there.
Mhm.
So just
Thanks.
food for thought. I don't know if this current board feels that way.
Yeah.
But it just says, graduate with the knowledge and 21st century skills to access post-secondary education or a meaningful career. That's it.
Point taken. Thanks.
So no questions from the board on that? All right.
I think just thank you for letting us interject questions throughout.
Dr. Hurst wants to share something.
Just wanted to clarify for one of our board members, for Tyson. I just find the graphic actually says if you miss 0 to 4 days, your chances to graduate on time is reduced to 87%, which is why we have that cutoff for 4 days. Once you miss 5 to 9, it goes down to 63%, 10 to 14, 41%, 15 to 19 days, 21% chance of graduating on time. And then, like I said, once you get to 40 days or more, there's 0 chance to graduate on time. So I just wanted to share that with you. That's why we're using that cutoff point, 4 days.
And is that consistently year after year,
Yes.
the numbers?
Mhm.
Okay.
Would our system allow us to look at a student maybe who didn't graduate on time in the 4 years and then find out the history of that student and their attendance over their years of being in the district?
So our system allows us to do that now?
Yeah, what we saw 2 years ago, Justin Johnson, I know what he started to track at the elementary schools. We had these in-house data sheets that track student performance around STAR assessments and smarter balanced performance. He started to embed a column around attendance. So certainly I think you could layer the class of 2019 and their attendance patterns over the last 3 or 4 years. It would take a little bit of data mining, but you could certainly find that data.
I was just curious to know if, obviously there's a national study that you're citing, right?
Right.
We wonder if Othello School District students would follow that same trend, or if it would be different. Okay, so thank you for the reports. So I told the board I was going to mention a little bit around our policy. So we will be using BSR 4.1.1 template, and that is a monitoring response document for ends. And so the 4 choices on this are: 1, based upon the information provided, the board finds that the superintendent has reasonably interpreted the provisions of the relevant ends policy, and the district is making reasonable progress toward achieving the desired results called for in the relevant policy. The board commends the superintendent for exemplary performance in the following areas. Now, the second one would be: based upon the information provided, the board finds that the district is making progress toward achieving the desired results called for in the relevant ends policy, but a greater degree of progress is expected in the following specific areas. The third one: further action is required. Based upon the information provided, the board finds that the superintendent has failed to provide evidence of reasonable organizational progress toward achieving the desired results called for in the relevant ends policies. Accordingly, the board determines the following action to be taken. So that would be essentially, we did not make the results that we needed, kind of across the board on that ends. And then the fourth one is an option, and I believe the board chose this on one of them last year, maybe 2 of them. The information provided by the superintendent is insufficient for the board to decide. So that would be, well, we don't feel like we have enough information, and that's an option as well. So as you're filling out that survey, just keep that in mind. It's much different than the EL surveys. Okay, so we will move on to item D2, the board approval of monitoring response documents from the last board meeting, based on the SurveyMonkey results.
I move we accept the monitoring response documents.
Well done, Jen. We accepted them. There's been a motion by Director Stevenson to accept.
Second.
Second by Director Garza. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. On to item E1, several policies in here. First, we have the policies that we just monitored. We also have all policies associated with students on governing boards. And we have a EL 12 policy revision that had been discussed earlier. Where would you like to start? I guess I'll ask the question to start with. Is there a desire to make any modifications to EL 15, GP 8, or GP 14 that are on here because of this cycle?
No.
Okay, and we don't necessarily need a motion to approve those, but we can just kind of move past those. We have GP 7.1, which is going to be the 1920 board calendar, which will go into effect July 1st, by the way. Would you like to start with that one?
July 1st, June 1st?
Probably. June 1st, yes. Yeah, so it is on this one where we'll change it. No, it's not. It's the May one that says ends 1 and 3. Okay. June 1st, yes, thank you for the correction. So is the board okay with starting with that one, the calendar? My suggestion is we just do a first reading on this anyways, because there might be some things that we think of as we go. And we can do second reading next meeting and still approve it in time.
Okay. It says second reading, but okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, we can do a third reading if we want.
Okay.
I agree.
So this is the items that we discussed at the retreat, but I would also like to add that we did talk about PAC meetings, but that was not added. One of the options on that, if the board wants to, we got anything?
I was giving permission to leave. She has a senior report tomorrow.
Oh, gotcha. Good luck.
Thank you.
So we had talked about our linkage changing this coming year for 2 board members will link once a month, and we'll rotate who links with who. The PAC meeting is an option where we could, 2 board members could pick a PAC meeting to link. If you would like to do that rather than schedule a specific PAC meeting, that's an option.
My only concern with, we're still on GP 7.1, right?
Yes.
Sorry, is that it specifically says individuals' names. I know that there are 3 people that, 3 elections of board members that will be in November. So I don't necessarily want it to change to say District 1, at-large person 1, or something, just so that we understand that that might not be the individual, just the position, I guess.
Right. Yeah, so there's an opportunity if we want to change that to be not a specific person's name, or just understand that there would be a change to the calendar at that time. What would the board rather do? Would they like to keep it this way?
I
or
think the
change it to
names are more
districts?
convenient. Just,
I say change the names if it comes to it.
yeah.
Okay. Nothing's guaranteed. All right. The other item I want to talk about, well, going back, sorry, we didn't get it. For the PAC meetings, is the board okay with saying, well, maybe we'll just choose a PAC meeting for one of those visits, whether it's more informal? 2 board members will go to that, and then make that decision as those PAC meetings come up. I would just say that David Spencer, we just need to probably know a little bit in advance to put us on the agenda. Okay. And then the other, you have anything to say with that? The other item would be student rep dates. So we're going to have potentially a second student rep appointment if we approve all that, or I think the board seemed to be in favor of that in general. There are just some other details we're working out. So we don't have dates for those student rep. First, there'll be another training, student rep interviews, student rep application deadline, that will need to be added. So, if the board's okay, I don't think we need to hash out what those dates will be. I can just ask Talia to mirror them basically. Right now, July 1st is the start date, so we'll look at January 1st and we'll just back up and mirror the same dates for the end of the
In
year.
December, okay.
Is that okay?
I have a quick question. Have the student rep applications, have those been created and are those available yet?
It's one of our policies, actually.
Oh, okay.
So the hope is they're available in about 20 minutes. 10? 10, even better.
Okay.
So you want to do January 1 and June 1 instead of end of semester, end of school year? Just to
So-
confirm.
I think that we had originally talked about it actually January 1, July 1. But it's whatever the board would like to do. Since we talked, I think we've been talking about doing July 1, then if you go 6 months, it's going to be January 1.
Right. I'm fine with those dates. That means we're picking in December.
Mhm. Good point. And here's the great thing. We might try it for a year and say, maybe we should move that.
Right, right.
Okay. Everything else has been added in based on what we talked about in the board retreat. Does the board have anything in here that they question right now? Okay, then these other items are just the student rep dates for the mid-year term will be added to this. Please go through and study it thoroughly. It's going to be a really fun read, but maybe we won't miss any ends 1 and ends 3 like we did this last year. And then hopefully we'll look to do final approval next board meeting. Sound good? Okay.
And you didn't schedule a meeting on Memorial Day. I caught that. I specifically looked at that because that's consistently been.
That's one of the common ones. It's a 4th
Right.
Monday. Okay. Jen, did you want to talk about EL 12 a little bit?
No,
in the verbiage in there?
I still need to tweak. I was thinking about it today, knowing, there's not enough time but no, not ready to go yet.
Want to leave that again for next board meeting?
Yes, please.
All right. I don't think it's a significant enough change. We're probably, Dr. Hurst and our technology department is on just waiting for us to make a decision.
Pins
on
and
this.
needles.
I-
Right, I know.
It's not gonna have a
What is she gonna
significant
do? I know.
Impact, is it? Okay. Okay, so what's left are all regarding student reps.
I move that we approve GP 14.1, GP 14.1.1, GP 14.1.2, which is E1-6, E1-7, and E1-8.
Okay, so 14 was not included in that, right?
Yes? Oh, didn't we already approved that because it's just a redo? I thought you said.
There's no changes to it.
Just because it was already supposed to be in reports. I thought you said EL 15, GP 8, and GP 14. Sure,
I'm
add that
guessing
in
it's
if we need
because
to.
we tabled it from last.
Yes.
It would just carried over from our last policy review, so that's why it's in there, I think. So there's been a motion to approve the revisions to GP 14.1, 14.1.1, and 14.1.2.
Second.
Second that.
And that was motion by Director Stevenson. I think Director Garza got in sooner with the second.
Sure.
Any discussion? 14.1.2 is brand new policy, should we at least read it?
Would you like to read it out loud? Since
No, I don't ever.
Did you want
do
me to
well
read
with
that out
so-
loud?
But I mean, as a board, do we want to
I read
talk
it.
about it, or?
I think it's
wrote
funny
that
that 3
30
has an
seconds.
A and no B, but I don't, Tony always was particular about that, but honestly, I don't care.
I thought it was well done.
Well, it has a 5 and no 6 too. Should we call that out?
It's like, what?
Yeah, formatting, we could change the formatting if we want to. I don't know if we have any sub-bullets in any other policies.
I,
Is it? Just as long as it's the same
Does it
format
really
as those
matter?
policies, that's all that matters to me.
right.
So
It
the
gets the
board's
gist across.
Okay with this project. I wanted
yes.
to be really clear about the understanding that there's not an expectation that just because a student rep makes a policy revision, that it's going to be accepted.
Right, very
They're
clear.
gonna do one step, which is the student, they're gonna hear the student voice on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up to the board if they say, you know what, this is something we want to take on, and the board then goes the extra step to go with the community, and whether or not we accept it. And I think it should be not something we take lightly. I think it should be something where we go, this really is something we need to consider, not just say, well, the student rep brought it, we really should honor that. You know, that's not my intent at all with this project. My intent is for the student to engage in the principles of policy governance.
I think it would be good for us to approve it since next Monday we're doing student rep training. It'd be nice to have there.
We could approve it with some verbiage modifications as a one-time.
I read it. I think it's good
All right, well,
myself.
great. Okay. Any further, oh. It is the same format apparently as other policies, so we're good with that. Any other discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries 5-0, so that's, so what we're looking at then is for GP 7.1 and EL 12 to remain for the next board meeting, right? And the others, EL 5, or EL 15, GP 8, and GP 14, there are no desires for changes or revisions to those policies. Am I correct with that? So they will remain the same. Okay. So we will have 4 policies in policy review next time. GP 7.1, EL 12, ENS 2, and ENS 3. Looked confused there, Jen. Got it?
Yeah, then you explained, so I caught on.
Okay. All right. So now there is a need for executive session. The purpose will be to discuss potential real estate purchase or lease. No action will be taken. The expectation is 20 minutes for that executive session. We will recess to clear the room for a couple minutes and try to, or should we go into a different room? So,
Yes.
okay, so we'll start executive session at 9 o'clock.